She was 10 years old, sitting alone on her birthday, waiting for guardians who'd never show. In desperation, she walked up to the scariest biker in the parking lot and asked him to be her family for just one day. What she didn't know, the man with the leather jacket and hardened heart had been waiting his whole life for someone to choose him, too. The blue birthday balloons had stopped bouncing hours ago. They hung limp against the cracked vinyl booth of Joe's Diner, deflating slowly like Aisha Washington's hopes. The vanilla cake her waitress had brought out, bought with tip money because nobody else had ordered one, was melting under the fluorescent lights. Little rivers of frosting pooled around the base, making the number 10 candle tilt sideways. Aisha adjusted her paper crown for the 100th time. It kept slipping down her forehead, too big for her small head. She'd made it herself at school that morning, decorating it with silver stars and her name in careful block letters. Aisha's birthday, it said, as if anyone needed reminding. "Sweetheart, it's almost 7 Nor." The waitress, her name tag reading Sheila, slid into the booth across from her. Her eyes were kind but tired. The same look Aisha had seen on every adult who'd ever felt sorry for her. "Maybe we should call someone. They're coming." Aisha's voice was small but certain. She clutched the gift card in her hands, the edges soft from hours of nervous rubbing. $30 to the bookstore downtown. She'd saved it for 4 months doing chores. Guardian said she'd be here at 4. Foster dad said 5:30. They're just running late. Sheila opened her mouth, then closed it. They both knew what running late meant when it came to Ms. Lopez and Mr. Evans. Ms. Lopez was probably at her sister's place. The one she said was more important than some kid's party. Mr. Evans was likely still at the warehouse or the bar, or anywhere that let him forget he had a foster daughter waiting. "Tell you what," Sheila said, squeezing Aisha's hand. "How about I wrap up that cake? You can take it home, eat it whenever." The rumble cut her off. It started low like distant thunder, then grew into a roar that rattled the diner's windows. Aisha's head snapped toward the parking lot. Through the glass, she watched as motorcycle after motorcycle rolled in, their chrome gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Big bikes, loud bikes, the kind that made the pavement vibrate and scared the pigeons off the power lines. 1, 2, 5, 8 of them in total. The riders killed their engines one by one, and suddenly the diner was too quiet. Aisha could hear her own heartbeat. She'd seen bikers before. Everyone in Riverton had. The Steelhawks Motorcycle Club wasn't exactly welcome at church picnics. They looked like the men from her nightmares, all leather and tattoos and hard faces that never smiled. But today, Aisha wasn't scared. Today, she was desperate. "What are you doing?" Sheila hissed, as Aisha slid out of the booth. "Making a wish," Aisha whispered back. She pushed through the diner's glass door before Sheila could stop her. The bell chimed cheerfully, absurdly out of place. Outside, the air smelled like gasoline and summer heat. The bikers were pulling off their helmets, stretching their legs, not paying attention to the small black girl and the crooked paper crown approaching them. The biggest one noticed her first. He was a mountain of a man, broad-shouldered with a graying beard that reached his chest. His leather vest was covered in patches and pins Aisha couldn't read, and his arms were painted with ink, skulls, and flames, and things that probably meant he was dangerous. His eyes were dark, almost black, and when they landed on Aisha, they widened slightly. "Kid," he said, his voice rough like gravel. "You lost." Aisha's courage wavered. Up close, these men were even more frightening. Their boots were steel-toed, their faces were scarred. One man had a tattoo of a hawk's head on his neck that seemed to snarl at her. But then she remembered the empty booth, the melted cake, the gift card she'd saved for months that she'd have to spend alone. "Could you be my family for today?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. 8 bikers stared at her like she'd just asked them to fly to the moon. Someone laughed nervously. Another muttered something under his breath. The big man, the one who'd spoken first, crouched down until he was eye level with Aisha. "Say that again, Princess." Aisha's chin trembled, but she didn't cry. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry today. "It's my birthday. I'm 10. My guardians were supposed to come, but they didn't. And I've been waiting all day, and I just..." Her voice cracked. "I just don't want to be alone anymore." The parking lot was silent except for the distant hum of traffic on Route 12. Sheila was watching through the diner window, her hand on the phone like she might call the police. A couple at a nearby gas station had stopped pumping to stare. The big biker studied Aisha's face. His expression was unreadable, carved from stone. Then slowly something shifted. His jaw unclenched. His eyes softened just a fraction. "What's your name?" "Aisha. Aisha Washington." "Well, Aisha Washington. I'm Wolf." He stood up, towering over her again, and glanced back at his crew. They looked as confused as he probably felt. "You know what? I think we can do that." Aisha's heart jumped. "Really? Really?" Wolf turned to a skinny biker with red hair. "Dusty, get the sidecar ready. We're taking the birthday girl for a ride. Are you insane?" Another biker sputtered, this one younger with a shaved head. "Wolf, we can't just..." I said, "Get it ready." Wolf's voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. The kind of weight that made grown men obey without question. Within minutes, they'd attached a small sidecar to one of the bikes and found a spare helmet. Too big, but they stuffed napkins inside to make it fit. Aisha stood in the middle of the parking lot, paper crowns still crooked on her head, watching these scary-looking men fuss over her safety like worried uncles. "You sure about this?" Sheila called from the doorway, anxious. Wolf looked at her, then at Aisha, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I am." He lifted Aisha into the sidecar like she weighed nothing. The leather seat was warm from the sun. The world looked different from down here. Bigger, more exciting. Wolf straddled his bike, and the engine roared to life, powerful and alive beneath them. "You ready, Princess?" Aisha gripped the sides of the sidecar, and for the first time all day she smiled a real smile, the kind that started in her chest and spread to her face. "Ready." The Steelhawks pulled out of the parking lot in formation, 8 motorcycles and 1 little black girl in a paper crown. Inside the diner, Sheila grabbed her phone not to call the police, but to take a picture. Something told her this was a moment worth remembering. As they disappeared down the highway, the sun beginning its descent. Nobody in Riverton knew they'd just witnessed the beginning of something bigger than a birthday wish. Nobody knew this was the day everything would change. The wind tasted like freedom. Aisha had never felt anything like it. The way the air rushed past her face, cool and alive, making her paper crown flutter wildly. The world blurred into streaks of green and gold as they roared down Pine Ridge Road, leaving Riverton behind. Above them, the sky was turning pink and orange, the sun melting into the horizon like her forgotten birthday cake. "You good back there?" Wolf shouted over the engine's rumble. "This is amazing." Aisha's voice was pure joy, high and bright. She threw her hands up, and Wolf quickly reached back to steady her. "Hands inside, Princess. Safety first." Behind them, the other Steelhawks followed in a V formation. Dusty had pulled out his phone, recording everything. "This is going to break the internet," he muttered, grinning as he captured Aisha's delighted squeals. They rode past Thompson's farm, where the cornfields stretched endlessly toward the horizon. The stalks were in full bloom, thousands of green faces turning toward the dying light. Aisha gasped, pointing. "Look, they're all watching us." Wolf felt something crack inside his chest, something that had been frozen for a very long time. They curved along the Cedar River, where the water sparkled like scattered diamonds. A family having a picnic stopped mid-bite to stare. A man washing his truck dropped his hose. Mrs. Jenkins from the church bake sale actually clutched her pearls, her mouth falling open as the Steel Hawks passed, with a little black girl waving from the sidecar like a princess in a parade. "Is that Aisha Washington?" someone shouted. "Are those bikers kidnapping her?" "No, look, she's laughing." The whispers would start tonight and spread like wildfire by morning. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, there was only the road, the sunset, and a little girl who'd stopped feeling alone. After 20 minutes, Wolf signaled to pull over at a clearing near Willow Grove Park. The bikes rolled to a stop, engines ticking as they cooled. Aisha's legs were wobbly when Wolf lifted her out, but her smile was electric. That was the best thing ever. She spun in a circle, paper crown finally falling off. "Can we do it again?" "Maybe later, kiddo." Wolf picked up her crown and gently placed it back on her head. "You hungry?" As if on cue, Aisha's stomach growled. She nodded shyly. The Steelhawks had parked near Mario's taco truck, a beaten-up food stand that served the best street tacos for 3 miles. The owner, Mario himself, eyed the group nervously until Wolf held up his hands in peace. "Just feeding a birthday girl," Wolf said. "That okay?" Mario relaxed, then smiled. "Birthday? First tacos on the house." They pooled their change, crumpled bills and quarters from jacket pockets, and bought Aisha 2 tacos, a bag of chips, and the biggest ice cream cone Mario could make. Aisha sat on a picnic bench, swinging her legs as she devoured everything like she hadn't eaten in days. Maybe she hadn't. Wolf sat beside her, watching quietly. The other bikers kept their distance, giving them space, but staying close enough to hear. "Your folks," Wolf said carefully. "They forget a lot." Aisha licked vanilla ice cream from her fingers. "Guardian forgets birthdays sometimes and school stuff and dinner." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was describing the weather. "Foster dad's better, but he works a lot. They got assigned last year and now they're both too busy to remember me." "That's not right," Wolf said, his voice rough. "It's okay." Aisha looked at him with eyes too old for 10 years. "Today feels better anyway. Better than waiting." Wolf's jaw tightened. He looked away, staring at the darkening sky. The memory hit him without warning, sharp and unwelcome. He was 9 years old again, sitting in a concrete room at St. Luke's Children's Home. The social worker had brought a store-bought cupcake with a single candle. "Happy birthday, Tom," she'd said, her smile professional and empty. Around him, 15 other kids stared with hollow eyes. Nobody sang, nobody clapped. The cupcake tasted like cardboard and loneliness. That night, little Tom Riley had made himself a promise. Never care about birthdays, never care about anyone, never let it hurt again. He'd kept that promise for 40 years. Wolf blinked, pulling himself back to the present. Aisha was watching him with concern, ice cream melting down her hand. "You okay, Mr. Wolf?" He cleared his throat. "Yeah, princess. Just remembering something. Something sad. Something old." Aisha thought about this, then held out her ice cream cone. "Want some? Ice cream makes sad stuff hurt less." Wolf stared at the offered cone, sticky and melting, and given with such pure, uncomplicated kindness that it almost broke him. He took a small bite, and Aisha beamed. "See? Better." Around them, the Steelhawks pretended not to watch. Dusty wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Even Brick, 6'5" of pure muscle and bad attitude, looked away, his throat working. "Hey, Aisha," Dusty called out, trying to lighten the mood. "How about we get a proper photo? You and your family for the day." They gathered around the picnic table, these rough men with their leather and scars, and Aisha, in her paper crown, stood in the center. Mario snapped the picture on Dusty's phone. Later, when that photo went viral, people would say it was impossible to tell who looked happier, the bikers or the little black girl. As the sun finally set, and the stars began appearing, Wolf knew they couldn't keep riding forever. They'd have to take her back eventually, back to whatever home had let her slip away, back to guardians who forgot birthdays. But not yet. "One more ride?" Aisha asked hopefully. Wolf looked at his crew. They all nodded. "One more ride," he agreed. "But then we need to talk about where you really live, Princess." Something flickered across Aisha's face. Fear, maybe, or guilt. But it was gone so fast, Wolf almost missed it. "Okay," she whispered. They climbed back onto the bikes, engines roaring to life. As they pulled onto the dark road, none of them knew the truth yet. None of them knew Aisha hadn't just wandered from a forgetful family. She'd run. Wolf woke to his phone exploding. 19 missed calls, 47 text messages. His Facebook, which he'd barely used in years, had 220 notifications. He squinted at the screen through blurry eyes, trying to make sense of the chaos. Then he saw it. Bikers become little girl's birthday family. The photo from last night, Aisha in her paper crown surrounded by the Steelhawks, was everywhere. The Riverton Community Forum had shared it. The local news picked it up. Somehow it had jumped to Twitter and was spreading like wildfire. Faith in humanity restored. "This is the sweetest thing I've ever seen. Who are these guys?" "Heroes." Wolf's stomach twisted. He dropped Aisha off at the address she'd given them, a small apartment on Elm Street. She'd made them promise not to walk her to the door, said her caseworker would be worried if she saw the bikes. Something about it had felt wrong. But Aisha had hugged him tight and whispered, "Thank you for being my family." And he'd let her go. Now, staring at his phone, that wrong feeling bloomed into full dread. The knock on his door came. At 8:15 a.m., Wolf opened it to find Officer Maria Torres on his porch, still in uniform from the night shift. They knew each other. Maria had pulled him over twice for speeding, and once for a broken taillight. She was fair but firm. The kind of cop who didn't bend rules but didn't break people either. "We need to talk about Aisha Washington," she said, her face carefully neutral. Wolf's blood went cold. "What about her? Can I come in?" He stepped aside. Maria walked into his small living room. Sparse, clean, nothing but a couch and a TV and pictures of motorcycles on the walls. She didn't sit down. "First, that was a good thing you did yesterday," Maria said. "The town's talking about nothing else. But Wolf, did Aisha tell you where she really lives?" "Elm Street, number 312. I dropped her off myself." Maria pulled out her notepad. "That's Mr. Patel's apartment. Mr. Patel is 78 years old and lives alone. He hasn't seen any little girl." The room tilted. "What?" "Aisha Washington was reported missing yesterday at 3 p.m. from the Harmony Group home on the west side of town. She's been gone for over 18 hours. Group home." The words hit Wolf like a fist. "She told us her guardians forgot her birthday," Wolf said slowly. "Assigned guardians, Ms. Lopez and Mr. Evans." Maria shook her head. "Ms. Lopez and Mr. Evans lost their foster license 16 months ago. Aisha's been in the group system since. The Harmony home reported her missing after she didn't come back from school." She paused. "Wolf, where is she now?" "I don't know." His mind was racing. She lied about the address. I watched her walk up to that building, but a small voice from the hallway cut him off. "I didn't lie about everything." Both adults spun around. Aisha stood in the doorway to Wolf's spare room, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Her paper crown crumpled in her hands. She must have snuck back after he dropped her off. Must have hidden when he came home tired and distracted. "Aisha," Maria said carefully, dropping to one knee. "Sweetheart, everyone's been very worried about you. I'm not going back there." Aisha's voice was small but absolute. "You can't make me." Wolf felt his world narrowing to this moment. "Back where, princess?" Tears welled in Aisha's eyes. "The Harmony home. Mr. Klein. He's the group dad. He's mean, really mean. When he has parties with his friends, he locks us in our rooms, sometimes all day. He says we're too noisy, that we'll ruin his fun." The words tumbled out faster now. "And there's never enough food. And Jamal, he's 7. He wet the bed, and he made him sleep in it for 4 days as punishment." Maria's face hardened. "Aisha, these are serious accusations. I'm not lying." Aisha's voice cracked. "Why doesn't anyone believe me? I told the social worker last month, and she said Mr. Klein was under a lot of stress, and I needed to be more understanding. But I'm 10. I don't understand why being locked in a room is okay." Wolf was on his knees now, eye level with Aisha. His hands shook with an anger so profound it scared him. "Did he hurt you?" Aisha pulled up her sleeve. Finger-shaped bruises marked her upper arm, old ones fading to yellow, newer ones still purple. Maria cursed under her breath. She pulled out her phone, taking photos. "Aisha, I need you to show me any other injuries, and I need you to tell me everything about the Harmony home. Are you sending me back?" "Not today," Maria said firmly, but she looked at Wolf with troubled eyes. "But legally, she can't stay here either. Wolf's not a registered foster parent. He's not cleared by the state. If I don't report her location, I could lose my badge. So, what are you saying?" Wolf's voice was dangerous. Maria ran a hand through her hair, clearly torn. "I'm saying I came here on my own, off duty. As far as the official investigation goes, I haven't found Aisha yet." She checked her watch. "I'm required to report any findings within 24 hours of discovery. That gives us until tomorrow morning, 8:15 a.m. "To do what?" "To find proof." Maria looked at Aisha. "Sweetie, do you know where Mr. Klein keeps his records, or where the other kids, or when he locks them up?" Aisha nodded slowly. "There are 6 of us. The rooms are upstairs. He keeps us quiet during his parties by saying, if we make noise, we don't eat." The next day, Wolf stood up, his jaw set. "We're going to that house." "We can't just—" Maria started. "Yes, we can." Wolf was already pulling out his phone, texting the crew. "We're going to get proof. We're going to document everything, and we're going to make sure no one ever hurts these kids again." Maria should have said no. Should have reminded him about laws and procedures and proper channels. Instead, she looked at the bruises on Aisha's arm and made a choice. 24 hours, she said. "Not a minute more. And Wolf, if this goes sideways, I was never here." Understood. Aisha grabbed Wolf's hand. "You're not leaving me, right?" He squeezed back, gentle but firm. "Princess, I'm never letting you go back there. That's a promise." In the back of his mind, Wolf knew he was risking everything, his freedom, his club, his entire life. But when he looked at Aisha's hopeful, terrified face, none of that mattered. Some promises were worth keeping, no matter the cost. The hunt had begun. Rain hammered against the windows like tiny fists demanding entry. Wolf's cabin sat at the edge of Riverton, where the paved roads gave way to dirt and pine trees. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smelled like coffee and motor oil, walls decorated with faded rally posters. But it was quiet, safe, And right now, that was all that mattered. Aisha sat cross-legged on the living room floor, a needle and thread in her small hands. Wolf's old leather jacket, the one with the torn sleeve from a crash 4 years ago, lay spread across her lap. She was concentrating hard, her tongue poking out slightly as she tried to make neat stitches like this. She held up her work. Wolf looked up from his laptop where he'd been researching child welfare laws until his eyes crossed. The stitches were crooked and uneven, more tangled than repair. They were perfect. That's good work, Princess. My grandma taught me, Aisha said softly. Before she passed, she said every girl should know how to fix things. Her needle paused. Do you think she misses me? The question stabbed Wolf somewhere deep. I think people make mistakes, big ones, and I think some people don't know what they have until it's gone. That's a nice way of saying no. Wolf closed his laptop. This kid was too smart, too aware. Come here. Aisha set down the jacket and climbed onto the couch beside him. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, low and ominous. The cabin lights flickered but held. You want to know a secret? Wolf asked. Always. I was in group care too, from when I was 7 until I aged out at 18. Aisha's eyes widened. Really? Really? 14 different homes in 11 years. Some were okay. Most weren't. Wolf stared at the rain-streaked window, but he was seeing the past. There was this one place, the Millers. Mr. Miller used to line us up every morning for inspection. If our beds weren't perfect, if our shoes weren't shined, we didn't eat breakfast. I was 10, same as you. And I kept messing up on purpose just to see if he'd notice me. If anyone would notice me. Did they? Yeah, with a belt. Aisha's hand found his, small fingers wrapping around his calloused palm. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. I bounced around after that, Wolf continued. Each home, I promised myself I wouldn't care, wouldn't get attached, wouldn't let anyone matter. And you know what? It worked. I grew up hard, joined the military at 18, got out at 24, and found the Steelhawks. Brothers who chose each other instead of being stuck with each other. But you were still alone, Aisha said quietly. Even with brothers. Wolf looked at her, startled. How do you figure that? Because I know what alone feels like. It doesn't matter if people are around you. If they don't really see you, you're alone anyway. She squeezed his hand. That's why yesterday was so special. You saw me. The rain fell harder. Thunder shook the windows. After my last group home, Wolf said, his voice rough. The social worker, her name was Miss Jenkins. She asked me if I ever wanted kids of my own. I told her, no, never. I promised her I'd never get attached to anyone again because it hurt too much when they left. He paused. I kept that promise for 22 years, Aisha. 22 years of not caring, not feeling, not risking. But, Aisha prompted, but maybe promises can change if hearts do. Aisha smiled, small but genuine. That's what I think too. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the storm. Eventually, Aisha's eyes grew heavy. Wolf carried her to the spare bedroom, tucking her under a quilt his grandmother had made decades ago, the only thing he'd kept from before. Wolf, Aisha's voice was sleepy. You won't let them take me back, right? Never, he promised. Sleep now, princess. Tomorrow's a big day. She was asleep within minutes. Wolf returned to the living room to find his phone buzzing. The Steelhawks group chat was exploding. Dusty. Boss, the whole crew's ready. What's the plan? Brick. Say the word. We ride. Spike. I've got a buddy who does private investigation. He can get us equipment. Wolf typed quickly. My place. 1 hour. Come quiet. 52 minutes later, 7 motorcycles rolled up Wolf's drive with their engines nearly silent. a trick they'd learned running midnight charity rides through hospital zones. The crew filed into his cabin, dripping rain, smelling like leather and determination. Wolf spread a hand-drawn map across his kitchen table. This is the Harmony Group home. 2-story house, residential street, neighbors on both sides. Mr. Klein hosts parties on Saturday nights. That's tomorrow. Aisha says that's when he locks the kids upstairs. We're going in during a party, Dusty asked. 2 of us pose as city inspectors doing a surprise check, Wolf said. Building code violations. The rest stay outside with cameras documenting everything, every window, every room, any sign of neglect or abuse. Maria, who'd arrived separately in civilian clothes, leaned against the counter. I can't be part of this operation officially. I don't know anything about it, but she pulled out a small device. This is a body camera. If you happen to record anything criminal, it would be admissible in court. Brick cracked his knuckles. What if this Klein guy tries to stop us? He won't, Wolf said coldly, because we're going to be so professional, so official that he won't dare refuse. We document, we record, we get out, then we hand everything to child services and let the system work. And if the system doesn't work? Spike asked. Wolf's expression hardened. Then we make sure the whole town knows what's happening in that house. We make so much noise that they can't ignore it anymore. The crew nodded, grim but united. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, 8 bikers and 1 off-duty cop planned their quietest, most important ride yet. Tomorrow night, they would walk into darkness. Tomorrow night, they would bring the truth into light. And if they failed, a little girl in a paper crown would pay the price. But failure wasn't an option Wolf was willing to consider. Not anymore. The Harmony Group home looked anything but harmonious. Peeling white paint hung from the siding like dead skin. The front lawn was overgrown with weeds, and a rusted swing set sat motionless in the backyard, its chains frozen with rust. From the street, Wolf could hear music thumping inside, loud bass and laughter that sounded too carefree for a house full of children. It was 9:12 p.m. on Saturday night. Party time. Wolf and Dusty wore navy coveralls they'd bought at the hardware store, clipboards in hand, official-looking badges clipped to their pockets. The badges were fake laminated cards Spike had designed that said, County Building Inspection, close enough to pass a quick glance. You nervous? Dusty whispered. Terrified, Wolf admitted. Let's go. They approached the front door while Brick circled to the back with his phone, recording everything. Spike and 2 other club members were positioned across the street in a van. Cameras trained on every window. Wolf knocked. 3 firm raps. The door swung open to reveal a man in his 50s with greasy brown hair and beer-stained teeth. Mr. Klein. He wore too much cologne and a shirt too tight for his gut. Behind him, a dozen adults crowded the living room, drinks in hand, completely oblivious to whatever was happening upstairs. Can I help you? His words were slightly slurred. Evening, sir. County Building Inspection. Wolf held up his clipboard with practiced authority. We've received complaints about structural issues in this neighborhood. Required to do a quick check of the premises. Won't take more than 15 minutes. Mr. Klein's face went through several emotions: confusion, annoyance, fear, then forced politeness. This really isn't a good time. Sir, if we have to come back with the fire marshal, we'll need to do a full evacuation and inspection that could take days. Wolf's voice was flat, bureaucratic. 15 minutes now, or we schedule a full review next week. Your choice. The threat of more official scrutiny made him cave. Fine, but make it quick. He stepped aside, wobbling slightly. Wolf and Dusty entered. The living room reeked of cheap beer and cigarettes. Nobody paid them any attention. The party was too loud, too drunk to care about men with clipboards. I'll check the main floor, Dusty said loudly for show. You take upstairs. Affirmative. Wolf headed for the staircase. Mr. Klein started to follow, but one of his friends grabbed his arm, pulling him towards the kitchen with a shouted story. He waved Wolf off. "Just don't make a mess." The stairs creaked under his weight. At the top, the hallway was dark and quiet, eerily so compared to the chaos below. 6 doors, all closed. Wolf's heart hammered as he pulled out his phone and started recording. He opened the first door. 5 children sat on 2 single beds, huddled together in the darkness. The oldest looked maybe 12. They flinched when they saw him, fear written across their faces. "Please don't tell Mr. Klein we made noise," the oldest boy whispered. "We've been quiet. We promise we've been quiet." Wolf's throat constricted. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help." He panned his camera across the room. No toys, no books. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling. The mattresses had stains. The window was nailed shut, a fire hazard, and a prison. "Where's the bathroom?" Wolf asked gently. The boy pointed to a bucket in the corner. Wolf felt rage boil in his chest, white-hot and barely controlled. He forced himself to stay calm, to keep recording. "What's your name, kid?" "Malik." "Malik, can you show me your arms?" Slowly the children extended their arms. Bruises. All of them had bruises in various stages of healing. Fingerprints on biceps, marks on wrists where they'd been grabbed too hard. "How often does Mr. Klein lock you up here?" "Every Saturday and Sunday," Malik said. "Sometimes during the day, if we're bad, or if he has friends over, or if we're just in the way." Wolf documented everything. The locked window, the bucket, the broken furniture shoved in the corner, the children's injuries. Then he moved to the next room. 3 more kids, same conditions, same bruises, same terrified eyes. The third room held Jamal, the 7-year-old Aisha had mentioned. He was curled on a bare mattress that still smelled of urine, crying silently. When he saw Wolf, he hid his face. "It's okay, buddy," Wolf said softly, kneeling. "Nobody's going to hurt you anymore. You promise?" Jamal's voice was barely audible. "I promise." Wolf took photos of everything. The water stains on the ceiling, the mold in the corners, the window locks that turned these bedrooms into cells. Each image was damning. Each image was evidence. Downstairs, he heard Dusty's voice growing louder, keeping Mr. Klein distracted with questions about electrical outlets and foundation cracks. In the last room, Wolf found something worse than abuse. A file cabinet unlocked and overflowing with papers. He pulled out a folder at random. Inside were invoices, government payments for group care, $600 per child per month. Mr. Klein was being paid for 6 children, but the food receipts told a different story. $35 a week for groceries, for 6 kids. Wolf rifled through more files, his hands shaking. Medical care claimed but never provided. Clothing allowances pocketed. Educational supplies non-existent. Mr. Klein was getting $3,600 a month and spending maybe $400 on the kids. Then he found the real smoking gun. A letterhead, New Horizon Group Agency, and beneath it a contract showing Mr. Klein was one of 18 homes under their management. A note in the margin written in sloppy handwriting. "Keep complaints minimal. These contracts are too profitable to lose." This wasn't just one abusive group home. It was an entire network designed to exploit the system and the children in it. Wolf photographed every document. His rage now cold and calculated, he grabbed the most damning papers and stuffed them in his jacket. "Wolf," Dusty's voice came up the stairs. "We got to go. He's getting suspicious." Wolf took one last look at Jamal, at Malik, at all these children who'd been failed by every adult in their lives. "Soon," he told them. "I'm coming back for you soon." He descended the stairs, 2 at a time. Mr. Klein was in the hallway now, arms crossed. suspicion replacing his drunken hospitality. "Everything check out?" His voice had an edge. "Multiple violations," Wolf said flatly. "You'll receive a formal notice within 7 business days. Have a good evening." They walked out before he could protest, climbed into their truck, and drove 3 blocks before Wolf finally let himself breathe. "Did you get it?" Dusty asked. "All of it and more." Wolf pulled out the documents. "This goes way deeper than we thought." 2 hours later, they sat in Maria's apartment. Evidence spread across her kitchen table. She'd gone pale as she reviewed the photos, the paperwork, the recordings of children describing their treatment. "This is enough," she said quietly. "This is enough to shut them down." "Just the house?" Wolf asked. Maria looked at the New Horizon Group Agency letterhead. If what this suggests is true, that this agency is systematically neglecting children for profit. We're talking about criminal conspiracy, federal charges. This goes to the state attorney general. How long to investigate? Weeks, maybe months, and the kids stay there while we wait. Maria met his eyes. "No. With this evidence, I can get emergency removal orders by morning. All 6 children will be out of that house before noon tomorrow." Wolf slumped in his chair, exhaustion crashing over him. "And Aisha. Aisha, too. I'll make sure she doesn't go back." Maria hesitated. "Wolf, what you did tonight. It wasn't legal, but it was right. Sometimes that's all that matters." Outside, the first light of dawn was breaking. Inside, the evidence of corruption and cruelty sat ready to bring an empire of suffering to its knees. The ride for justice was about to begin. 3 days later, Riverton had never seen anything like it. The town square was packed. Hundreds of people crowded around the courthouse steps, more streaming in every minute. News vans from 3 counties lined the streets. Cameras pointed at the makeshift stage where a microphone stood waiting. Signs dotted the crowd. "Protect our children," "Justice for Aisha," "Shut down New Horizon," and motorcycles. Dozens of them. The Steelhawks had put out a call to every club within 200 miles. The Iron Riders from Brookfield, the Thunder Eagles from Arizona, the Pathfinders from Texas, bikers who'd never met but shared the same code. Protect those who can't protect themselves. They lined the square in formation, engines quiet, leather vests gleaming in the morning sun. Not a single club rivalry mattered today. Today, they were united. Wolf stood backstage, really just behind a curtain someone had hung. "Try not to throw up." "You don't have to do this," Maria said quietly. She was in full uniform now, official and proper. The evidence they gathered had moved fast. Emergency removal orders executed. 6 children pulled from the Harmony home at dawn the previous morning. Mr. Klein arrested. New Horizon Group Agency's bank accounts frozen, pending investigation. "Yeah, I do." Wolf's hands shook. "Someone needs to say it out loud. You've never spoken in public before. First time for everything." A small hand slipped into his. Aisha stood beside him, wearing a new dress Maria had bought, green with yellow stars. Her hair was in neat braids with beads. She looked like any other 10-year-old girl, except for the determination in her eyes that made her seem decades older. "You've got this," Aisha said. "Just tell them the truth. That's all anyone needs to hear." Wolf knelt down. "Eye level with her? You sure you want to be up there? This is going to be hard." "I'm sure." Aisha adjusted the banner in her hands. White fabric with blue letters she'd painted herself. "Kids deserve real families. People need to see that we're real, that we're not just numbers and files." Dusty poked his head around the curtain. "Boss, we're ready. Crowd's getting restless." Wolf stood, took a deep breath, and walked onto the stage. The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, even a few wolf whistles from the bikers. Wolf's face burned. He wasn't used to being seen as a hero. He was used to being the guy people crossed the street to avoid. He approached the microphone. The noise died down. "I'm not good at speeches," Wolf started, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm better with engines than words. But 3 days ago, something happened that changed everything." The crowd leaned in, listening. "A little girl asked me to be her family for one day. Just one day. Because the people who were supposed to care for her, the system designed to protect her, had failed. And I almost said no. I almost walked away because getting involved isn't what guys like me do." He paused, gathering courage. "But I didn't walk away. And what I found? What we found?" Wolf's voice grew stronger. 6 children locked in rooms like prisoners, starved, bruised, terrified, while the man paid to care for them partied downstairs and pocketed government money meant for their food, their clothes, their futures. Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I was one of those kids once," Wolf continued, and the square went silent. 32 years ago, I was in the system. 14 homes. 14 times I hoped someone would see me. Really see me. Most didn't. His hands gripped the microphone stand. "I aged out at 18 with $250. No family and a promise I made to myself. Never get attached, never care, never feel because caring hurt too much." Wolf's voice cracked. "I kept that promise for 22 years. 22 years of being alone, even when I was surrounded by people. 22 years of being nothing." Aisha stepped up beside him, holding her banner high. The cameras zoomed in. "And then this kid asked me one question. Could you be my family for today? Just today?" Just one day, Wolf looked at Aisha, and his eyes were wet. She gave me permission to feel again, to care again, to matter again. She saved me as much as I saved her. The crowd was completely silent now. Even the bikers, hard men who'd seen war and violence and every dark corner of life, stood with tears streaming down their faces. "So, we're here today for one reason," Wolf said, his voice rising to say enough. Enough corruption, enough neglect, enough letting children slip through the cracks because it's easier to look away. The New Horizon Group agency has been exploiting kids for profit across 7 counties. We have evidence, we have testimony, and we're not staying quiet anymore. He gestured to the crowd, to the bikers, to the families holding their own children close. This is the ride for hope. We're asking you to sign petitions demanding reform, demanding oversight, demanding that every group home gets inspected regularly by people who actually care. We're asking you to donate to legitimate children's charities. And most importantly, we're asking you to pay attention because these kids don't have voices loud enough to be heard over bureaucracy and corruption." Wolf pulled Aisha close. "But today, we're their voice, and we're not shutting up until every single child in this system is safe." The crowd erupted, not just applause, a roar of agreement that shook the square. People surged forward with cash, checks, signatures. The donation tables set up by the stage were instantly mobbed. Maria stepped up to the microphone. "As of this morning, the State Attorney General's office has opened a formal investigation into New Horizon Group Agency and its 18 contracted homes. Criminal charges are pending, but this is just the start." She held up a petition. "This document demands monthly inspections of all group homes in our county, mandatory background checks every 6 months, and a dedicated hotline for children to report abuse anonymously. We need 6,000 signatures to present to the state legislature." By noon, they had 14,000. News coverage spread beyond local stations. By evening, the story was national. "Biker gang exposes group care scandal" ran across headlines. The viral photo from Aisha's birthday was everywhere again. But now people knew the context, knew the fight. As the sun set over the town square, Wolf stood with his crew, watching families leave with information packets and hope in their eyes. Aisha tugged his jacket. "Did we do good?" Wolf lifted her onto his shoulders, letting her see the crowd, the impact, the change they'd set in motion. "Princess, we did great. Does this mean you're keeping me?" Wolf's heart stopped. It's not that simple. There are legal processes, home studies, background checks. But do you want to keep me? He didn't hesitate. More than anything. Aisha wrapped her arms around his head, holding tight. "Then we'll figure out the rest." Around them, the Steelhawks roared their engines in agreement. Not a threat this time, but a promise. The ride wasn't over yet. The Riverton County Courthouse smelled like old wood and nervous hope. Wolf sat in the front row, his leather vest replaced by a stiff button-down shirt that felt like a straitjacket. Dusty and Brick flanked him, equally uncomfortable in their attempt at respectability. Behind them, the courtroom was packed. Townspeople, reporters, even some of the bikers from the rally, all waiting to hear Judge Elena Vasquez's ruling. 7 weeks had passed since the ride for hope. 7 weeks of investigations, interviews, and revelations that had rocked the state's group care system to its core. The bailiff stood. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Vasquez presiding. Judge Vasquez was a woman in her 50s with black hair streaked with silver and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been on the bench for 20 years and had a reputation for fairness and for not tolerating nonsense from anyone. She sat, shuffled papers, then looked out at the courtroom over her reading glasses. "This has been one of the most disturbing cases to cross my desk," she began, without preamble. The evidence presented by the State Attorney General's office paints a picture of systematic abuse, financial exploitation, and criminal negligence spanning 7 counties and affecting over 50 children. A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. The New Horizon Group Agency, operated by Director Victor Lang and his associate Paula Reed, has been engaged in a fraudulent scheme to maximize government payments while minimizing actual care. Children were placed in substandard homes with minimal oversight. Complaints were deliberately suppressed. Inspections were falsified. Judge Vasquez's voice grew harder. Mr. Ronald Klein, the operator of the Harmony Group home, has been found guilty on 14 counts of child endangerment, 5 counts of assault, and multiple counts of fraud. He will serve 10 to 18 years in state prison. Murmurs of approval. Wolf felt Aisha squeeze his hand. She was sitting beside him, wearing her best dress, her hair in braids with ribbons. She looked like any other 10-year-old girl, except for the determination in her eyes. Victor Lang and Paula face federal charges and await trial. The New Horizon Group Agency has been permanently dissolved, its assets seized to provide restitution to affected families. The judge paused, taking a sip of water. However, her eyes landed on Wolf. "We must address the elephant in the room. Mr. Riley, please stand." Wolf rose, his heart hammering. "Mr. Riley, what you and your associates did, entering that home under false pretenses, removing documents, conducting an unauthorized investigation was illegal. Vigilante justice, no matter how well-intentioned, undermines the legal system and sets dangerous precedents." Wolf's stomach dropped. Was she about to arrest him? That being said, Judge Vasquez's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "The evidence you gathered was credible, unadulterated, and ultimately admissible due to the exigent circumstances of child endangerment. Your actions, while legally questionable, were morally defensible. This court acknowledges that sometimes the system fails, and it takes ordinary citizens to remind us of our duty." She pointed her gavel at him. "But don't do it again. Next time you go through proper channels. Understood?" "Yes, Your Honor," Wolf said. his voice rough with relief. "Sit down." He sat. Judge Vasquez shuffled more papers. Now we come to the matter of Aisha Renee Washington's permanent placement. Aisha's hand tightened in Wolf's grip. Miss Washington has been in temporary protective custody these past 7 weeks. While this court evaluated placement options, her previous guardians have not contested the state's decision to permanently terminate their assignments. Wolf felt Aisha flinch. He pulled her closer. Multiple families have expressed interest in adoption. However, Miss Washington has been very clear about her preference. The judge looked at Aisha with something like kindness. "Young lady, you've been through more than any child should endure. This court wants to ensure you're placed somewhere you'll be safe, loved, and happy. Is that what you want?" Aisha stood up, her voice small but steady. "I want to stay with Wolf. He's my family. Mr. Riley is a single man with a modest income and an unconventional lifestyle." "Are you certain?" "He sees me," Aisha said simply. "Really sees me. That's all I've ever wanted." The courtroom was dead silent. Judge Vasquez nodded slowly. "Mr. Riley has undergone extensive background checks, home studies, and psychological evaluations. He has no criminal record, stable employment, and strong community support. Under normal circumstances, I would require a longer trial period." However, the rear courtroom doors opened. A woman walked down the aisle, tall with dark hair streaked with gray, wearing a simple green dress. She looked tired, like she'd been traveling for days. Her eyes were red from crying. Wolf's breath caught. Laura Riley, Wolf's wife, estranged for 4 years after a fight that had sent her to her brother's house in California, stopped beside him. "I came as soon as I saw the news," she said softly. "I'm sorry it took me so long." Wolf stared at her speechless. They hadn't spoken in months beyond brief, cold texts about paperwork and finances. He'd assumed the marriage was over, had been too proud and too scared to fight for it. "Your Honor," Laura addressed the judge, "my husband and I have been separated, but we never divorced. When I saw what he did, what he risked for this little girl, I realized I'd forgotten who he really was, who we could be together." She looked at Wolf. "If you'll have me back, I want to help raise her. I want us to be a family again." Aisha looked between them, confused, but hopeful. "You're married?" "I was too broken to be a husband," Wolf said quietly. "Thought I'd hurt her by staying." "You hurt me by leaving," Laura replied, tears streaming down her face. "But we can fix broken things. This little girl taught you that, didn't she?" Wolf couldn't speak. He just nodded. Judge Vasquez cleared her throat. "Well, this is unexpected, but not unwelcome. Mrs. Riley, are you willing to undergo the necessary evaluations for joint guardianship?" "Absolutely, Your Honor." The judge made notes, consulted with the social worker at her side, then looked up. Given the unique circumstances, the community support, and Miss Washington's clear preference, this court grants temporary guardianship of Aisha Renee Washington to Tom and Laura Riley, pending completion of Mrs. Riley's background check and a 6-month evaluation period. Aisha gasped. "Does that mean—" "It means you're going home with them today," Judge Vasquez said. "And if everything goes well, we'll finalize the adoption in 6 months." Aisha turned to Wolf, her eyes huge. "Does this mean you're my real dad now?" Wolf knelt down, pulling her into a hug that felt like it could hold the whole broken world together. "Always have been, kiddo." The courtroom erupted in applause. The Steelhawks stood, whooping and hollering. Even Judge Vasquez smiled, tapping her gavel lightly to restore order. As they left the courthouse, Wolf, Laura, and Aisha walking together into the afternoon sun, the bikers formed an honor guard, their motorcycles rumbling a promise of protection. A little girl had begged for a family for one day. She'd gotten one for life. 1 year later, Joe's Diner looked like it had been kissed by hope. Fresh paint covered the walls, warm orange instead of institutional beige. New booths with cushions that didn't have duct tape holding them together, and covering the entire back wall, a photo gallery that told a story of transformation. Children smiling, bikers laughing, families forming in the most unexpected ways. The centerpiece was the original viral photo. Aisha, in her paper crown, surrounded by the Steelhawks, ice cream melting in her hand. Beneath it, a brass plaque read, "Where it all began." Sheila, the waitress who'd watched it all unfold, wiped down the counter and smiled. The diner was packed today, not just with regulars, but with families from 3 counties who'd come for one reason, Aisha's 11th birthday party. Wolf stood near the kitchen, watching the chaos with something close to wonder. The past year had been a whirlwind. Background checks, court dates, family counseling sessions that had felt like excavating old wounds. But Laura had been patient. Aisha had been resilient, and somehow, impossibly, they'd become what they'd all needed: a family. "You going to stand there looking nervous all day?" Laura appeared beside him, carrying a massive birthday cake decorated with blue frosting and edible stars. She looked different now, lighter, happier, with laugh lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Just taking it in," Wolf said. "She's fine. Better than fine. Look at her." Aisha sat at the center booth, surrounded by kids her age, real friends from school, not the lonely girl who'd waited alone in this same diner a year ago. She was laughing at something Jamal said. The 7-year-old from the Harmony home, now 8, and thriving in a new foster family. Malik, the 12-year-old who'd been so terrified that night, sat beside them, wearing a jacket with a Steelhawks patch that read, "Honorary Member." All 6 children from that house had been placed in vetted, loving homes. All 6 were here today. "Speech time," Dusty announced, tapping a glass with a spoon. The diner quieted. Wolf reluctantly made his way to Aisha's booth, Laura beside him. The crowd pressed in. Bikers in leather vests that now said, "Ride for Hope Children's Foundation" on the back, townspeople who'd once crossed the street to avoid them, reporters who'd followed the story as it grew beyond Riverton. "I'm not good at this," Wolf started, and the room chuckled. "But my daughter asked me to say something, so..." Aisha beamed at the word daughter. The adoption had been finalized 3 months ago. She was officially Aisha Washington Riley now. "A year ago, a little girl asked me to be her family for one day," Wolf continued. "She was 10 years old, sitting alone in this diner, waiting for guardians who never came. And she chose us, these rough, scary-looking bikers nobody trusted, because she saw something everyone else missed." He paused, emotion thick in his throat. She saw that family isn't about blood or perfection. It's about showing up. It's about seeing people when they feel invisible. It's about keeping promises, even when it's hard. Laura squeezed his hand. That one day turned into an investigation. Then a movement. Then... Wolf gestured at the walls. The Ride for Hope Foundation has raised over $2.5 million for group care reform. We've helped place 42 kids in permanent homes. We've trained 220 volunteers to be court-appointed advocates, and we've partnered with 6 counties to implement new oversight protocols. Applause rippled through the diner. "But more than that," Wolf said, his voice softening. "Aisha gave us something bigger. She reminded an entire town what it means to care. She turned a motorcycle club into a family. She brought my wife and me back together." She looked at Aisha, his eyes wet. "She saved me again and again, every single day." Aisha stood up and hugged him, and the diner erupted in cheers. Detective Maria Torres, now promoted to sergeant, raised her coffee cup. To Aisha, who taught us that the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. To the Steelhawks, Mayor Alvarez added. The same mayor who'd once tried to run them out of town, who proved that heroes come in unexpected packages. To family, Laura said quietly, in all its forms. They sang Happy Birthday off-key and too loud. Aisha blew out 11 candles, one for each year and one for good luck. While making a wish, she wouldn't tell anyone. The cake was vanilla with chocolate frosting. Her favorite. There were presents piled high, but the best gift sat in the corner. A brand new bicycle with no training wheels because she'd learned to ride with Wolf running beside her, refusing to let go until she was ready. As the party continued, Wolf stepped outside for air. The parking lot was full of motorcycles again, but this time they represented something different. Not rebellion or danger, but hope, purpose, second chances. You did good, boss. Brick joined him, lighting a cigarette. Real good. We all did, Wolf corrected. Every single one of us. Inside through the window, Wolf watched Aisha laughing with her friends. Laura was cutting cake, chatting easily with other parents. The photo wall glowed in the afternoon light, a testament to what happens when people choose to care, instead of looking away. His phone buzzed, a text from their social worker. Just placed another sibling group with a vetted family. They're safe now. Thank you for everything you do. Wolf smiled. The work wasn't over. It never would be. There would always be more kids who needed advocates, more families who needed support, more systems that needed fixing. But for today, there was cake and laughter and a little girl who'd asked for one day of family and gotten a lifetime. Dusty appeared in the doorway. Wolf, Aisha wants you to see her birthday crown. She made it herself again. Wolf headed back inside, where his daughter waited with a crooked paper crown covered in stars, just like the one from a year ago. But this time, when she placed it on his head instead of her own, everyone laughed. This time she wasn't alone. This time she was surrounded by people who would show up every single time, for every birthday and every ordinary day in between. Sheila took another photo. Wolf in a paper crown, Aisha on his shoulders, Laura laughing beside them. The Steelhawks crowding in, townspeople filling every corner of the frame. Another moment worth remembering. Another family worth fighting for. As the sun set over Riverton, casting golden light through the diner windows, Wolf understood something fundamental. Aisha hadn't just found a family that day. She walked up to 8 scary bikers and asked the impossible. She'd created one. She came asking for a family for one day and ended up giving them one for life.